Katie Pavlich with townhall.com. Thank you so much for coming on the program tonight.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Okay, so first question. Have you read closely all 400-plus pages of the Inspector General's report?
Not all of them. I've gotten through probably about 100 pages, but I've been kind of jumping around the 500 pages and looking for certain things. And so
I think I think that's the only way that you can actually read this thing, because we all want to know. Okay, well, was this covered? Okay, well, was this covered? And you're trying to skip ahead, go back. What are your overall thoughts on the Inspector General's report?
Well, they right at the beginning of the report, they initially acknowledged that there's a connection between Fast and Furious and Brian Terry's murder, which I think is which is significant because we know that, we've been stressing that, but DOJ and ATF officials have tried to downplay that angle of this whole thing. So the Inspector General's report acknowledges that. But, I think it's a little soft on these top-tier officials. I know that some people have resigned today, and Eric Holder's saying he's going to fire a bunch of people. But, the main question for me is, why is executive privilege necessary if this report and people are saying that Eric Holder's been essentially wiped clean of any responsibility for this program? Was President Obama, abusing his power in that, asserting that executive privilege,
right,
or is there things that we just don't know? And on that point, my question is, now that the IG investigation is over, is the Justice Department going to release all the documents that the Oversight Committee has requested? Because we've heard for months and months and months that the reason why those documents weren't submitted was because there was an ongoing internal investigation, right? Well, that's over now, so what is going to be the excuse from this point forward not to release that information?
Those are all really, really good questions, Katie. In particular, the question about executive privilege. Why was this asserted? And again, if this is all over and done with, and the Attorney General didn't know anything, well then why hold on to all of these documents? Because I do have a feeling that they're not going to hand them over just because the Inspector General's report has come out.
Right, fight number 2, right?
Well, exactly, and it'll be interesting to hear the excuse as to why they now won't turn over some of these documents. Now, did you notice, Katie? It's just interesting. We've heard about a lot of investigations that were similar to Fast and Furious, things like Operation Castaway,
right,
the operation in Dallas. This whole report is predicated on the idea that this whole thing began locally in Tucson with Operation Wide Receiver.
Right.
There's no mention of not just the possibility, but the fact that there were other ongoing operations outside of the Tucson, Phoenix offices that
Houston,
where gun walking was taking place. And I got to tell you, that's one of the big problems that I have with this report, because it seems to just not even, it doesn't even address that fact.
Well, and that's absolutely true. I mean, we've seen evidence of, gun dealerships in places like Texas saying, look, ATF was forcing us to do the same thing that they were doing in Arizona. Now, what I do appreciate about this report is there's an entire section about the gun dealership conflict of interest with ATF. And the report lays out, look, you guys control their, we've been saying this for months. You control their licenses, you control how they operate, and there's a huge conflict of interest for you to ask them to be so-called confidential informants in a program like this because there's, you control what they do. It's essentially intimidation. But, it doesn't answer the question of this was an OCDF operation. The report mentions that, but it doesn't go into detail about how many agencies were involved. It doesn't touch Homeland Security. It doesn't really talk about the FBI much. It definitely doesn't talk about whether the State Department had any involvement in this. And so it's even though it's 400 pages long, 500 pages long, it doesn't get down to all the details that we want to know about.
No, it doesn't. And look, I mean, again, clearly most of the blame is placed on these local staffers and officials in Phoenix. But, we've said all along, Katie, that there are two explanations. Either Attorney General Holder was aware of what was going on and allowed it to happen, or they're complete ignoramuses at Justice Department and nobody's minding the store.
Right.
And it appears as if they went with option number 2.
Right, exactly. And also, one thing I want to mention, too, is that, Eric Holder was out with a, spike the football moment 20 minutes after this report was released. And his statement, was pretty long, but the line that stood out to me was when he said that the department's leadership did not attempt to cover up information or mislead Congress about it. I'm just wondering what his definition of department leadership is, considering, the February 4th letter that was withdrawn from Congress was edited multiple times by his second-hand man, Lanny Brewer, who was the number 2 guy in the Justice Department. It was signed off by Ronald Weick, who is the Assistant Attorney General, and sent to Congress, and it was pulled back and retracted because it was so full of falsehoods and was so misleading. And even the Inspector General's report contradicts Holder's initial spike the football response to this report. And as Christian Adams came on your show, I believe it was last week, discussed that, this is the bottom line of this is this is the Justice Department investigating itself. And so it's important to take everything with a grain of salt. Yes, it's a legitimate report, but it's also important to understand who was putting this out there and what that means.
Well, yeah, and I mean, it's funny. When I saw Eric Holder's statement, I kind of chuckled to myself because the Inspector General's report, look, Holder's been telegraphing what the Inspector General's report is going to say. I mean, Holder's been saying this, and then all of a sudden the narrative appears in the Inspector General's report that they've been working on for 19 months. It's not beyond the realm of possibility, Katie, that the Inspector General may have tailored the narrative of this report to perhaps fit what his boss was saying when he was testifying before Congress.
Speaking of that, I'm really glad you brought that up because people are going to get confused about the details that really matter here.
Right.
Michael Horowitz got on the job in March. The person who did the bulk, and he's the Inspector General now, the person who did the bulk of the work on this report, on this IG report, was Cynthia Schneider. And she worked for Eric Holder during his time as the U.S. Attorney in D.C. and has a long-time standing professional and friendship with him. And so, the facade makes it look like Michael Horowitz is the one who did all of the investigation on this and all of the preparation, when really it wasn't him, even though he's going to present it tomorrow.
Yeah.
It was Cynthia. And she's the one who has the conflict of interest with Eric Holder, who is one of her buddies. And so, of course, there's going to be some tailoring there.
All right. I'm seeing a tweet here from our colleague Matthew Boyle today, caller, who says Senator Grassley has already found a factual error in the IG report. I imagine tomorrow's hearing before the House Oversight Committee is going to be pretty interesting, and any errors that have been found by then are going to be addressed.
Yeah, I think it'll be a little bit messy, but I'll be there live tweeting it, so.
All right.
Enjoy.
Well, listen, Katie, appreciate you coming on the program tonight. We'll let you get back to the other 300 pages or so you haven't read yet.
Yes, thank you.
We will see you Friday with your colleague Elizabeth Meineke here in
we'll
studio.
Be in studio. We're looking forward to it.
Me too. All right, we'll talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon. Thanks so much.
Katie Pavlich with townhall.com. Join us here tonight on Cam & Company.